Hello and welcome everybody, and welcome to today's Facebook Live event. And today we are talking about volunteering, and I'm joined today by Christina, who is a London Assistant Team Manager. And yeah, so we're going to look at a little bit more about volunteering. Volunteering is something that we ask our prospective adopters to strongly consider. So Christina will talk a little more about it. So thanks for joining us, Christina. So first of all, can you explain, thank you. First of all, can you explain the process just briefly of adoption?
So the process of adoption is completed in 4 different stages. We have, the first stage where people are approaching us when they are interested to adopt, where they attend one of our information evenings. And then we provide them with a lot of information about adoption. They can have a chat with us privately about any issues they may want to discuss. And then we hold what we call an information sharing meeting, where at the moment this is done virtually, where you share some of your circumstances. We ask some questions you can ask about adoption. And then at the end of this, we make a decision whether we want to proceed to accept your application. And then you progress to stage 1, where we complete all relevant checks, local authority checks, DBSs. We interview your referees, ex-partners, where this applies, employment checks. And then if all the information are positive, we progress with stage 2, where it is essentially the assessment process, and that can be 4 months. And at the end of it, hopefully you are approved by our panel as a prospective adopter with a recommendation on age range, number of children. And then hopefully after that, you are linked with a child, and a child is placed in your care. And that is this in a nutshell.
Okay, thanks for explaining that. So can you explain to us and let us know, why do we ask prospective adopters to volunteer?
So what we find is a lot of people that approach us because they are interested to adopt. A lot of them have some childcare experience by looking after children or within their family and friends network. But and this is a very valuable experience to have. However, caring for a child that is not related to you, or a child with additional needs, or a child that may come from a very different background to your family and friends, is a different cup of tea. So, and through volunteering, people get the opportunity to interact with different children from very different backgrounds with very different level of needs. And this gives adopters confidence and gives them tools. Also, they get to work with other professionals that have a lot of childcare experience. They get to observe how people manage challenging situations. So when it comes to you caring for a child you are not related to, you feel more able to adjust your parenting based on the child's needs rather than what you are used to within your family network.
Okay, thank you. And is there any PACT charity that encourages prospective adopters to think about volunteering?
Excuse me, Grace?
Is it only PACT charity that encourages prospective, or is it just expected generally?
No, not everybody's expecting adopters to volunteer. A lot of charities do. We do find that local authorities really appreciate the fact that our adopters have experience of working with children, and makes them stand out amongst other adopters who don't. So I cannot speak for every local authority and every charity. What I can say, it has always been something that we got positive feedback for our adopters from local authorities.
Okay, thank you. And can we offer any help and support to people who are looking for volunteer placements?
So we do expect people to be proactive in seeking a voluntary position. We ask people to, look in the area, Google organizations. Some people are more successful than others in that. So we will provide you with a list of organizations that a lot of our adopters volunteer, and then, you can approach them as well. We can always provide you with supporting letters. We can speak to the organizations to verify your information. And your social worker will always be able to make some helpful suggestions to you.
Okay. And at what point would you suggest that people begin their volunteering?
I mean, ideally, even before, you start the process, but we do expect people in stage 1 to have made a few steps in securing a voluntary position.
And so what types of setting would be good to volunteer at?
So a lot of our adopters volunteer in, organizations like Kin, Beanstalk. So children that have some additional needs, and they run play groups or particular schemes like reading schemes, nurseries, primary schools for adopters that they already have birth children. They can approach the school of their child and ask if they need additional help. Scouts is a very good source. So any setting with children that are within the age range you are considering to adopt would be the best. And I would say being involved with children with additional needs is a great asset to have in the adoption process.
Okay, thank you. So how many hours would the prospective adopters be expected to do? And would you expect both applicants, if people are applying as a couple, would they both be expected to volunteer? So how many hours, and would they both be expected?
I mean, the more the best. We expect both applicants to volunteer, and most of our adopters volunteer on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. So I would say that would be the rule of thumb for volunteering.
Okay then. And if people have experience of working with children, or they've already got birth children, would we still expect those people to volunteer?
So if somebody has significant childcare experience through work, this is something we could discuss, because, for instance, teachers, they do this every day. So we wouldn't necessarily expect them to volunteer on top of that. And again, depends. If you are a teacher in a secondary school, we would then advise you that maybe you want to volunteer with younger children. In terms of adopters with birth children, we do advise adopters to work with children that are not related to them, that they are not used to them, and they have different needs to their own birth children.
Okay then, thank you. Just had a couple of questions come in. So what about people, somebody's asked, what about experience with friends' children? If they've had experience of looking after their friends' children, what would you say to that?
I would say that's great, and keep up with this. And it's a great experience to have, but it's not the same as working within a very structured setting and with children that may have different needs to your friends' children. And what we tend to find is that people that have experience through, friends, the amount of time they spend with the children is not as much. So sometimes we may suggest adopters to have children stay overnight at their house, to have them without their parents there, because this obviously changes a lot the dynamics.
Okay, thank you. And another question, is there a minimum amount of hours that people should volunteer for?
Yes and no. So we expect people to commit to volunteering on whatever the setting wants them to volunteer, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, and we expect them to keep up with it until a child is placed with them and beyond. A lot of our adopters actually will continue volunteering after that.
Okay. All right, I don't think we've got any more questions. Okay, that's it. That's been really informative. Thank you. So thanks for joining us today. And there's lots more information on our website, pactcharity.org, and like and follow our Facebook page as well. And so thank you for joining us today. And thank you, Christina.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.